High Commander Zekthorn stood before the Emperor's council chamber, his forearms crossed in a gesture of confidence. The massive room glowed with holographic star maps that showed the Vrexian Empire's territory. 40% of the known galaxy belonged to them. It had taken 3,000 years to build this empire, but Zekthorn wanted more. The Forbidden Zone, he said, pointing to a dark region on the map. We have avoided it for too long. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They were old, and old beings remembered the stories. The Forbidden Zone surrounded a small yellow star called Sol. Ancient warning buoys floated at its borders, broadcasting messages in 47 dead languages. Most of those languages belonged to species that no longer existed. The warnings are clear, said Counselor Veshna, her voice trembling slightly. No ship shall enter. No contact shall be made. The humans must remain isolated. Zekthorn laughed. It was a harsh sound that echoed through the chamber. Humans. Has anyone actually seen a human? My grandfather's grandfather never saw one. Neither did his grandfather. These warnings are 3,000 years old. Whatever danger once existed is long gone. He pulled up another display. This one showed resource scans taken by long-range probes. The Sol system was rich beyond imagination. Rare metals, advanced technology signatures, and dozens of habitable worlds in the nearby sectors. All of it untouched, waiting. While we respect ancient myth, Zekthorn continued, the Empire needs resources. Our expansion has slowed. Our enemies grow bold at the borders. If we claim the Terran zone, we will have enough materials to build a fleet twice our current size. The Emperor, an ancient Vrexian who had ruled for 500 years, leaned forward on his throne. His scales had dulled with age, but his eyes remained sharp. What if the warnings are true? Then we will face whatever remains with overwhelming force, Zekthorn replied. I request permission to lead a fleet of 200 warships into the zone. We will investigate, claim the resources, and return as heroes. The council debated for hours. The older members spoke of caution and wisdom. The younger members spoke of glory and expansion. In the end, ambition won over fear. The Emperor gave his approval with one condition. If they encountered any resistance, they would retreat immediately and report back. Zekthorn agreed, though he had no intention of retreating from anything. 3 weeks later, his fleet assembled at the border of the Forbidden Zone. 200 warships, the pride of the Empire, waited for his command. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Together they represented the might of the Vrexian military. As they approached the boundary, the first warning buoy came into view. It was an ancient thing, covered in solar panels and slowly rotating in the darkness. Its message played on all frequencies. Turn back. The quarantine must be maintained. For your own safety, do not proceed. The message repeated in dozens of languages. Some of the words made no sense anymore. The translators struggled with the ancient dialects. Ignore it, Zekthorn ordered. Forward! The fleet crossed the invisible line that marked the Forbidden Zone's edge. For a moment, nothing happened. The stars looked the same. Space remained cold and empty. Several officers on the command ship visibly relaxed. See? Zekthorn said. There is nothing to fear. Set course for the nearest planetary system. We will begin our survey there. The fleet moved deeper into forbidden space. They traveled for 2 days without incident. Their sensors showed several planets ahead, all with signs of civilization. Energy signatures, artificial structures, and communication networks. Yet strangely, no ships came to investigate the massive fleet entering their territory. Perhaps they are afraid of us, suggested the navigation officer. Or perhaps no one is home, added another. They were about to find out, which was true. On the third day, the fleet's long-range sensors detected unusual activity. A signal was being transmitted from somewhere ahead of them. It was a simple message, but it used an encryption method the Vrexians had never seen before. Their computers struggled to decode it for nearly an hour. When they finally cracked the code, the message was short. Only 2 words in the ancient human language called English. They're here. The message was not directed at the Vrexian fleet. It was being sent deeper into Terran space toward the Sol system itself. Zekthorn stared at the translation. Something about those 2 simple words made his scales itch. They were not a greeting. They were not a question. They were a statement of fact. A notification, like someone marking a calendar or checking off a list. Who sent this? He demanded. Unknown, Commander. The signal appeared to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Our tracking systems cannot pinpoint a source, and that's impossible. Yes, Commander, but that is what happened. Zekthorn looked at the star map. They were still 5 days from reaching the Sol system itself. Dozens of worlds lay between their current position and Earth, the legendary human homeworld. Somewhere in that darkness, someone knew the Vrexian Empire had arrived, and someone had sent a message. The High Commander squared his shoulders and pushed his doubts aside. He had come too far to turn back now. The Emperor expected results. The Council expected conquest. And Zekthorn expected glory. Continue forward, he ordered. Battle stations. Shields at maximum. Weapons ready. The fleet pressed on into the Forbidden Zone, their ships bristling with weapons, their crews prepared for war. Behind them, the ancient warning buoy continued its endless broadcast, spinning slowly in the darkness. The message played on, ignored and forgotten. Turn back. For your own safety, do not proceed, but it was already too late. Deep within Terran space, the message had been received, and humanity was preparing to remind the galaxy exactly why their territory had been forbidden for 3,000 years. The first colony world appeared on the fleet sensors after another 2 days of travel. It was a beautiful planet, covered in oceans and green land masses. The orbital scans showed cities, spaceports, and industrial complexes. Everything indicated an advanced civilization, but the cities were empty. Zekthorn sent down survey teams to investigate. They walked through streets that looked like they had been abandoned only days ago. The buildings had power. The machines still worked. Food was still fresh in storage facilities. But there were no people. No humans, no bodies, no signs of violence or disaster. It's like they just vanished, reported the team leader. Everything is here except the inhabitants. The same pattern repeated on the next 3 worlds. Advanced colonies, all recently abandoned, all perfectly preserved. It made no sense. Why would an entire civilization evacuate their worlds and leave everything behind? They knew we were coming, suggested the tactical officer. They ran away. Zekthorn wanted to believe that. It fit with his expectations. The mighty Vrexian fleet had scared the humans into hiding. But something about the empty cities bothered him. They did not look like places abandoned in panic. They looked like places that had been deliberately preserved. Like museums. Like warnings. The fleet continued toward Sol. Finally, they reached a large space station orbiting a red dwarf star. The star maps identified it as Proxima Centauri, the closest neighboring star to the Sol system. The station was old but functional, and for the first time since entering the Forbidden Zone, they detected a life sign. A single human was waiting for them. Zekthorn ordered his flagship to dock with the station. He brought 20 armed soldiers with him, weapons charged and ready. They found the human in a simple conference room, sitting calmly at a table with 2 chairs. The human stood when they entered. He was smaller than a Vrexian, with only 2 arms and smooth skin instead of scales. He wore a plain gray uniform with no weapons visible. His face showed no fear, only a tired sadness. Welcome to Terran space, the human said in perfect Vrexian. My name is Ambassador Chen. I am here to ask you to leave. Zekthorn stared at the small creature. This was a human? This was what the galaxy had feared for 3,000 years. He started to laugh. His soldiers joined in. The sound filled the conference room. You are alone, Zekthorn said when he stopped laughing. 1 human on 1 station. And you ask me to turn back a fleet of 200 warships? I do, Chen replied calmly. The Forbidden Zone exists for a reason. We ask that you respect the quarantine and return to your space. No harm has been done yet. You can still leave peacefully? Or what? Zekthorn stepped closer, using his greater height to intimidate the human. What will you do if we refuse? Chen looked directly into Zekthorn's eyes. The human's expression remained calm, but something in his gaze made the High Commander's confidence waver slightly. We left those warning buoys for a reason, Commander. We did not put them there to protect ourselves from you. We put them there to protect you from us. We are not trapped out here with you. You are trapped in here with us. The words hung in the air. Zekthorn felt his soldiers shift uncomfortably behind him. This tiny creature should have been terrified. Instead, he spoke like someone delivering a weather report. Simple facts. No anger, no fear. Just certainty. Enough, Zekthorn snapped. You will come with us as our prisoner. You will answer questions about your civilization, and you will watch as we claim your worlds for the Empire. Chen did not resist when the soldiers grabbed him. He simply shook his head slowly. You are making a terrible mistake. The fleet left Proxima Centauri station behind and set course for Earth. Ambassador Chen was held in comfortable quarters under constant guard. He did not try to escape. He did not make threats. He simply sat quietly, reading books on a datapad and occasionally staring out the window at the passing stars. Zekthorian questioned him several times. Each time Chen gave the same warnings. Turn back, leave now. It's not too late. The High Commander dismissed these as the desperate words of a defeated enemy. As they traveled, the fleet passed more ghost colonies. More empty stations, more abandoned ships drifting in the void. Everything worked. Everything was preserved. But there were no people anywhere. Where are they? Demanded Zekthorian during one interrogation. Where are your people hiding? Not hiding, Chen replied. Waiting. For what? For you to make your choice. Leave or continue, peace or consequences. The words sounded ominous, but Zekthorian refused to be intimidated by a prisoner. The fleet pressed on. They were 3 days from Earth when the sensors detected something strange. The surrounding space began to distort. Not dramatically, just small fluctuations that the instruments barely registered. The science officers reported unusual readings but could not explain them. Zekthorian ordered increased vigilance. All ships went to full battle readiness. Weapons were armed. Shields were raised to maximum power. The fleet tightened its formation, presenting a unified front against any possible attack. Ambassador Chen stood at the window of his quarters, his guards flanking him. He looked out at the Vrexian warships and sighed. I tried, he said softly. I really tried. Tried what? Asked one of the guards. To save you. Before the guard could ask what that meant, the stars went out, not all the stars. Just the ones immediately around the fleet. One moment, space was filled with distant points of light. The next moment, darkness surrounded them. Complete and total darkness. The only light came from the Vrexian ships themselves. Alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the fleet. Officers shouted conflicting reports. The sensors showed nothing. Then everything. Then nothing again. The instruments could not make sense of what they were detecting. Zekthorian ran to his command deck demanding answers. His tactical officer's voice was shaking when he replied, Commander, the stars did not go out. They were blocked by ships. Thousands of ships. They were invisible, cloaked. Now they are uncloaking and they are everywhere. The main view screen activated, showing the space around the fleet. Zekthorian's blood ran cold. Massive structures surrounded them, not ships in the traditional sense. These were floating cities, orbital fortresses, weapons platforms the size of moons, and between them thousands upon thousands of smaller vessels, each one sleek, dark, and covered in what looked like advanced armor. The Vrexian fleet of 200 warships suddenly looked very small, very vulnerable, very alone. A message came through on all frequencies. It was Ambassador Chen's voice, but it was being broadcast from the human fleet, not from his quarters. This is your final warning. Leave now. Take your commander. Never return. This is your only chance. Zekthorian stared at the impossible sight before him. His mind raced. This had to be a trick. An illusion. These humans could not possibly have this much military power and remain hidden for 3,000 years. It was impossible. His pride made the decision for him. He had come too far. Risked too much. The Empire was watching. He would not retreat from what might be nothing more than a clever deception. All ships, he commanded. Open fire. Destroy them. The Vrexian fleet unleashed its weapons. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma torpedoes filled space with deadly light. The barrage was impressive, devastating. Enough firepower to destroy planets. The human ships simply vanished. Then the Vrexian ships started dying. The human ships did not fire back. They did not need to. The first Vrexian warship simply stopped working. Its engines went dark. Its weapons went silent. Its shields collapsed. The massive vessel, capable of destroying continents, became nothing more than a floating piece of metal and confused crew. Then the second ship failed. Then the third. Within minutes, 20 warships were completely disabled. No explosions, no visible damage. They just stopped functioning as if someone had flipped a switch. Panic spread through the fleet. Engineers ran diagnostics. Security teams searched for saboteurs. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Nothing made sense. Their systems were failing without any external attack that they could detect. Zekthorn watched his fleet fall apart around him. What is happening? How are they doing this? His science officer's hands shook as she worked her console. I don't know, Commander. Our systems are being compromised, but I cannot find any intrusion. It's as if something is already inside our computers, inside our ships. But that's impossible. We have the best security in the galaxy. More ships went dark. 50 now. A quarter of the fleet. The human vessels remained at a distance, motionless and silent. They were not attacking. They were simply watching as the Vrexian Empire's finest warships turned into expensive debris. A communication request came through from Ambassador Chen. Zekthorn accepted it. Desperate for any information, Chen's face appeared on the screen. He was no longer in his quarters. He stood in what looked like a command center, surrounded by other humans working at various stations. Behind him, holographic displays showed the complete tactical situation. The ambassador looked tired, disappointed even, but not surprised. You should have listened, Chen said quietly. When you captured me, when you brought me aboard your flagship, what did you think would happen? We shook hands, Commander. I breathed your air. I touched your walls. Did you really think we would send an ambassador into potential enemy territory without any insurance? Zekthorn's mind raced back to their meeting. Chen had stood calmly, spoke politely, never resisted. At the time, it seemed like weakness. Now a horrible realization began to dawn. What did you do to my ships? Nothing yet, Chen replied. But 2,000 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself with artificial intelligence and nanotechnology. We learned to control both, master both. When we quarantined ourselves, it was not because we were afraid of the galaxy. It was because we were afraid of what we might do to the galaxy. He gestured to the screens behind him. Every surface I touched on that station and on your ship was coated with molecular machines. Too small to see. Too small for your scanners to detect. They spread through your air systems, your computer networks, your very hull plating. In the time it took you to travel from Proxima Centauri to here, those machines reached every ship in your fleet. More warships went silent. 70 now. Almost half the fleet was disabled. The remaining crews were considering mutiny. Some captains begged Zekthorn to surrender. Others wanted to retreat. None knew how to fight an enemy that had already infiltrated every system they depended on. We are not here to destroy you, Chen continued. We are here to teach you. The colonies you found empty? We do not live on planets anymore, Commander. We have not lived on planets for 1,500 years. Planets are fragile, easy to attack, easy to destroy. So we moved. All of us. The view screen changed to show a wider view of the space around them. What Zekthorn had thought were weapons platforms and military stations were actually cities. Massive orbital habitats, each one home to millions of humans. They were everywhere. Around every star, in every asteroid belt, hidden in plain sight. Their cloaking technology so advanced that the Vrexian sensors had passed right by them without noticing. We do not have a military like your empire, Chen explained. We do not have soldiers and civilians. Every human you see is trained from childhood in defensive tactics. Every habitat is a fortress. Every ship is armed. Every citizen is a potential warrior. Not because we love war, but because we refuse to ever be vulnerable again. Zekthorn felt his world collapsing around him. 100 ships were now disabled. The remaining 100 were trying to flee, but their navigation systems were failing. Their engines were limiting themselves to minimal power. Even their communications were being disrupted. We watched you build your empire, Chen said, his voice growing harder. We watched you conquer species after species. We watched you turn sentient beings into slaves. We watched you commit genocide against those who resisted. We recorded it all. Every atrocity. Every war crime. Every broken treaty. And we did nothing. Because we had sworn to leave the galaxy alone. To keep ourselves separate. To avoid the temptation of using our technology to impose our will on others. The ambassador leaned forward. But you came here. You ignored the warnings. You violated the quarantine. And now, Commander Zekthorn, you have given us permission to act. The remaining Vrexian ships suddenly stopped trying to flee. Their systems stabilized, but under human control now. The crews were locked out of their own vessels. They could see. They could breathe. But they could not command their ships anymore. The human fleet, silent until now, finally moved. Not to attack, but to surround. Thousands of ships formed a perfect sphere around the disabled Vrexian fleet. Then, one by one, they began to dock. Zekathoran watched in horror as human teams boarded his ships. They moved with practiced efficiency, using cutting tools and technology that made Vrexian airlocks look primitive. His security teams tried to resist. They fired their weapons. The weapons stopped working. They tried to fight hand to hand. The humans moved too fast, too efficiently. They were not cruel. They simply knocked the Vrexian soldiers unconscious and moved on. Within an hour, every ship in the fleet was under human control. The boarding teams worked systematically, removing weapons, stripping navigation systems, taking data cores. They left life support functioning. They left food and water, but they took everything that made the ships dangerous. Ambassador Chen appeared at the door of Zekthoran's command deck. 2 human soldiers accompanied him. They were not large or intimidating. They wore simple uniforms and carried small devices that looked almost decorative. But Zekthoran's best security officers lay unconscious on the floor, taken down in seconds. "You will come with me," Chen said. "There are things you need to see, things you need to understand. I am a high commander of the Vrexian Empire," Zekthoran said, trying to maintain some dignity. "I will not," Chen raised his hand. The small device on his wrist glowed faintly. Zekthoran felt his muscles lock. He could not move, could not even twitch a finger. The paralysis was instant and complete. "We do not have time for pride," Chen said sadly. "Come, your education begins now." The human soldiers lifted Zekathoran gently and carried him from his own command deck. Behind them, the Vrexian fleet floated helplessly in space, conquered without a single shot hitting its mark. And deeper in Terran space, more human ships were beginning to move. No longer content to hide, no longer willing to ignore the suffering in the galaxy beyond their borders. The Empire had violated the Forbidden Zone. Now the Empire would learn why it had been forbidden. And that education would be far more terrible than any war could have been, because humanity was not coming to conquer. They were coming to judge, and they had 2,000 years of evidence against the Vrexian Empire and its crimes. The consequences, Ambassador Chen knew, would reshape the galaxy. But first, one arrogant commander needed to understand exactly what his people had done, and exactly what humanity was about to do in response. They brought Zekathoran to a habitat called Unity Station. It was larger than any city he had ever seen, rotating slowly to create artificial gravity. Through the massive windows, he could see Earth in the distance. The blue planet looked peaceful, beautiful, deceiving. The paralysis wore off as they entered a large chamber. Zekthoran found himself standing before a semicircle of humans. 7 of them, each wearing different uniforms. These were military commanders, he realized. Leaders. The humans who had orchestrated the complete defeat of his fleet without killing a single Vrexian. Ambassador Chen stood to the side. "High Commander Zekthoran of the Vrexian Empire, you stand before the Terran Defense Council. You will not be harmed. You will not be executed. But you will answer questions. And you will learn." "I will tell you nothing," Zekthoran said defiantly. An elderly human woman in the center of the semicircle smiled sadly. She had gray hair and tired eyes. "We do not need you to tell us anything, Commander. We already know everything. Please sit." A chair rose from the floor behind him. Zekthoran remained standing. The woman sighed and gestured. The chamber's walls came alive with holographic displays. "This is your empire," she said. The display showed the Vrexian territory in all its glory. Thousands of systems, hundreds of species. Beautiful, is it not? 40% of the known galaxy, an achievement that took 3,000 years. The view zoomed in on a specific planet. Zekthoran recognized it. Xelnor, a resource world. The display showed Vrexian ships landing, showed native beings forced into mining operations, showed those who resisted being executed. "We have been watching for 2,000 years, the woman continued. "Every planet you conquered, every species you enslaved, every genocide you committed when a species fought back too hard. The Meltari, the Peshnan, the Gorviks, 17 intelligent species extinct because they would not submit." More images filled the chamber. Atrocities committed in the name of the Empire. Civilians killed. Children separated from families. Entire populations worked to death in factories and mines. Zekthoran had known about some of these events.
He had participated in some of them.
But seeing them all together, documented in perfect detail, made his stomach turn. "Why did you not stop us?" he asked, his voice smaller than before. "If you had this power, why did you let it happen?" "Because we made a promise," replied a younger human man, his face marked with scars. 2,000 years ago, we nearly destroyed ourselves. We fought wars with weapons that made planets uninhabitable. We created artificial intelligences that turned against us. We built machines that consumed everything in their path. We were becoming monsters. The displays changed, showing Earth's history, cities burning, oceans boiling, a beautiful world tearing itself apart. We survived, the scarred man continued, but we were traumatized. We realized that our technology had advanced faster than our wisdom. So we made a choice. We would isolate ourselves, quarantine our entire species. We would give the galaxy 3,000 years to develop without our interference, 3,000 years to mature, to learn, to build their own civilizations. We failed, the elderly woman said quietly. The galaxy did not use that time to become better. It became worse. Species like yours conquered and crushed instead of cooperating. But we had made our promise. We would not interfere. We would not become the galaxy's police. We would not impose our will on others. Zekthorn felt something cold spreading through his chest. Until we entered your space. Until you entered our space, Chen confirmed. You broke the quarantine. You ignored the warnings. You gave us justification to act. And now we must, the elderly woman stood. I am Admiral Keiko Yamamoto, chair of the Terran Defense Council. High Commander Zekthorn, you and your fleet will be allowed to return to your empire. Your ships have been disabled but not destroyed. We have removed your weapons and your ability to navigate beyond basic travel. We have taken your data cores and copied every record you had. We will return you to your borders. Zekthorn felt a flicker of hope. They were letting him go? Perhaps this was not as bad as but we are not letting your empire go. Admiral Yamamoto continued, crushing that hope. Your invasion of Terran space was an act of aggression against a sovereign territory. More importantly, it was the act of an empire built on slavery and genocide. We cannot ignore that anymore. We will not ignore it. The display changed again, showing human fleets, hundreds of them. Thousands of ships emerging from hiding places throughout the galaxy. They were moving toward Vrexian territory from dozens of different directions. We are coming, the Admiral said simply, not to conquer, not to enslave, but to dismantle. Every slave world will be liberated. Every species under your control will be given the choice of independence. Every weapon of mass destruction will be removed, and every war criminal will face justice. You cannot, Zekthorn whispered. The other species in the galaxy will unite against you. You will face— We have evidence against them too, interrupted the scarred man. The Keltesh Confederacy, the Porwin Alliance, the Meridian Consortium. Every major power in the galaxy has committed similar crimes. We have watched them all, recorded them all. They will not unite against us because we have the truth about what they have done, and we will share that truth with their own citizens. Admiral Yamamoto walked closer to Zekthorn. Despite her age, despite her small size compared to him, he found himself stepping back. There was something in her eyes, something that spoke of absolute certainty, absolute resolve. You should have listened to Ambassador Chen, she said. We did not quarantine ourselves to protect us from you. We did it to protect you from us, because when we decide to act, High Commander, we do not do it halfway. We do not leave loose ends. We do not forget, and we do not stop until the job is finished. She gestured to the guards. Take him back to his ship. Send the fleet home. Make sure they understand what is coming. As they led him away, Zekthorn found his voice again. What makes you think you are better than us? You have weapons. You have power. How long before you become the very thing you claim to oppose? Admiral Yamamoto turned to look at him one last time. We do not think we are better, Commander. We know we are more dangerous. That is why we will not rule your empire. We will break it. We will free the species you enslaved. And then we will leave. We will return to our quarantine. And we will watch. If your people rebuild as something better, we will leave you alone. If you try to rebuild your empire of slavery and genocide, we will return. And we will be less gentle. This is not justice, Zekthorn said bitterly. This is tyranny. No, Chen replied from the doorway. Tyranny is what you did for 3,000 years. This is consequences. Finally, after all this time, the Vrexian Empire is facing consequences. You should be grateful it is coming from us and not from the species you enslaved. They would not be as merciful. Zek Thorin was taken back to his disabled flagship. His crew was already there, shaken but alive. The humans had left them food, water, and enough fuel to reach home. They had also left something else, a data drive containing every crime the Empire had committed for the last 2,000 years, evidence that could not be denied or dismissed. As the crippled Vrexian fleet began its slow journey home, Zek Thorin watched the human ships moving in the opposite direction. Toward his empire, toward everything he had known. He had come seeking glory and resources. Instead, he had awakened something the galaxy had forgotten to fear. Humanity was no longer hiding, and the empire he knew would never be the same again. The disabled Vrexian fleet took 3 weeks to reach home, 3 weeks of silence, 3 weeks of shame. Every member of the crew knew what waited for them. Not a hero's welcome, not celebration, but questions, accusations, judgment. The Emperor's response came before they even reached orbit. Zek Thorin was stripped of his rank. His officers were arrested. His crew was interrogated. The data drive the humans had left was declared fake propaganda. The Empire's leaders insisted that humanity could not possibly have the power the fleet described. That denial lasted exactly 4 days. Then the human ships arrived. They appeared simultaneously in 20 different Vrexian systems, not invading, not attacking, just appearing. Massive fleets that uncloaked near major worlds and stations. Each fleet broadcast the same message in every language spoken in the Empire. This is the Terran Defense Force. We are here to liberate those held in slavery and to dismantle military installations used for oppression. Any species wishing for independence will be granted safe passage. Any military force that interferes will be disabled. This is not a negotiation. This is a consequence. The Emperor, furious and terrified, tried to rally his military, tried to organize a defense, but the Vrexian military had just learned what happened to Zek Thorin's fleet. No one wanted to face the humans in battle. Captains refused orders. Crews mutinied. Entire fleets simply powered down their weapons and waited to see what would happen. In the absence of military resistance, the humans proceeded with cold efficiency. They landed on slave worlds and freed populations that had been in chains for generations. They destroyed weapons factories and orbital bombardment platforms. They seized data cores from government buildings, exposing 3,000 years of corruption and atrocities. But they did not occupy. They did not conquer. They freed. Then they left. The freed species faced a choice: remain under Vrexian rule or seek independence. Most chose independence. Within 2 months, 40% of the Empire's territory had declared itself free. The Vrexian Empire, built over 3,000 years, was collapsing in weeks. The Emperor tried to call for help from other galactic powers: the Keltesh Confederacy, the Porwin Alliance, the Meridian Consortium. Surely they would see the threat. Surely they would unite against this human menace. Instead, each of those powers found human ambassadors appearing in their capital systems. Each ambassador carried the same thing: complete records of their own crimes, slavery, genocide, weapons testing on primitive species, treaties broken, wars started under false pretenses. "We have watched all of you," the ambassadors said. "We have evidence of everything. If you interfere with our operations in Vrexian space, we will share this evidence with your own citizens, with your own enslaved species. We will give them the truth, and we will help them, just as we are helping the Vrexian slaves. The choice is yours." No one came to help the Empire. Zek Thorin watched it all from house arrest on his homeworld. They had taken his rank, but not his freedom to observe. He saw the news reports, saw the freed slaves celebrating, saw Vrexian governors fleeing their posts before human ships arrived, saw his proud empire crumbling. He expected to hate the humans for this. Instead, he felt something more complex, something uncomfortable. He began to truly see what his empire had been, what he had been a part of. The data drive the humans left was impossible to ignore. Every atrocity documented, every lie exposed, every victim named. One day, Ambassador Chen appeared at his door. The human was alone, unarmed, and looked as tired as ever. "Why are you here?" Zekthorn asked. To talk, Chen replied. May I come? In against his better judgment, Zekthorn let him enter. They sat in his study, surrounded by military honors that now felt hollow. You are destroying everything, Zekthorn said. No, Chen corrected gently. We are dismantling a system built on oppression. There is a difference. Your species is not being destroyed. Your people are not being enslaved. Your worlds are not being occupied. We are simply removing your ability to hurt others. And when you are done, what then? Will you rule us? Chen shook his head. In 3 months, we will be finished here. Every slave will be free. Every weapon of mass destruction will be removed. Every war criminal will face trial. And then we will leave. We will return to our space. We will go back into quarantine, and we will watch. Watch for what? To see what you become, Chen said. Your empire is broken. That is true. But your species is not. You have a choice now. You can rebuild as something better. You can form alliances with the species you once enslaved. You can create a government based on cooperation instead of domination. Or you can try to rebuild your empire. Try to reclaim your slaves. Try to return to the old ways. And if we do that, then we come back, Chen said simply. And next time, we will not be as gentle. Next time, we will not stop at dismantling. We will quarantine your entire species. Trap you on your homeworld. Remove your spaceflight capability. We can do it. We have the technology. We have the power. And if forced, we will have the will. Zekthorn looked at the small human. Why? Do you not just do that now? Why give us a choice? Because we remember what it is like to almost destroy ourselves, Chen replied. We remember the moment when we stood at the edge of extinction and had to choose what we would become. Every species deserves that choice, even yours, even after everything you have done. He stood to leave. The galaxy is entering a new age, Zekthorn. The age of hidden empires and ignored suffering is over. We are watching now, all of us. Every species you enslaved knows they can call for help. Every species you threatened knows you cannot threaten anymore. You wanted resources and glory. Instead, you woke up the galaxy's conscience. History will not remember you as a conqueror. It will remember you as the fool who proved that even the mighty can face justice. Chen walked to the door, then paused. I hope your people choose wisely. I truly do. Because humanity does not want to be the galaxy's guardian. We do not want to enforce peace. We want to return to our isolation and our own problems. But if we must come back, we will. And we will keep coming back until the lesson is finally learned. He left. Zekthorn sat alone with his thoughts. 6 months later, the Vrexian Empire officially dissolved. The Emperor abdicated. A new government formed, smaller and less powerful, but also less cruel. They called it the Vrexian Commonwealth. It was a beginning. Not glorious, not powerful, but perhaps in time something better. The human fleets kept their promise. They finished their work and vanished back into Terran space. The warning buoys were updated with new messages in the current common tongue. Terran space protected by humanity. Attack any sentient species within this zone, and learn why we were forbidden. Enslave any species anywhere, and learn why we chose to isolate ourselves. Humanity watches. Humanity remembers. Choose wisely. Other species across the galaxy read those warnings. Some laughed. Some dismissed them. But many, many more looked at what happened to the Vrexian Empire and made changes, freed their own slaves, reformed their own governments. Not out of love for humanity. Out of fear of what humanity might do. Ambassador Chen returned to Earth for the first time in 3 years. He stood in a garden on Unity Station, looking down at the blue planet below. Admiral Yamamoto found him there. Do you think they learned? She asked. Some of them, Chen replied. Others will need more convincing. There will be more incidents, more violations, more consequences we must deliver. We cannot police the entire galaxy. No, Chen agreed, but we can respond when they come to us. When they violate the zones, when they commit atrocities too large to ignore, we can be the consequence that every tyrant fears. Not the rulers, just the reminder that actions have results. Yamamoto looked troubled. How long can we maintain this? How long before we become the very thing we fought against? I don't know, Chen admitted. But we have to try. Because if we do not, who will? If the powerful never face consequences, what does that teach the galaxy? They stood together in silence, watching their homeworld turn slowly below. Humanity had broken its quarantine, had entered the galaxy once more, not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as something perhaps more dangerous, as judges, as enforcers, as the species that finally proved that even empires could fall. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity, for better or worse, would never be able to return to its complete isolation. They had made their choice when Zekthoran crossed that boundary. Now they had to live with the consequences of their own actions, just as the Vrexian Empire had learned to live with theirs. In the darkness beyond known space, new warning buoys activated. Humanity was expanding its protected zone, not to conquer, not to claim, but to watch, and to remind the galaxy that someone was always watching, someone who remembered every crime, someone who would respond when the innocent called for help. Terran space was still forbidden, but now, the forbidden zone included any place where the strong oppressed the weak, any place where slavery existed, any place where genocide was attempted. The boundaries had shifted, not on maps, but in the minds of every species that had seen what happened to the Vrexian Empire. The age of consequences had begun, and humanity, reluctant and weary, stood as its instrument. They had tried isolation. They had tried patience. Now they would try something new: balance, justice, and the hope that someday the galaxy would learn to police itself. Until that day came, humanity would watch, and when necessary, humanity would remind the galaxy exactly why they had been feared and forbidden for 3,000 years, not because they were cruel, but because when they chose to act, nothing could stop them, and they always kept their promises.